with the 20th anniversary of SummerSlam coming about, they decide they're going to create this buzz the entire summer long and basically make it so that WWE is the most fan-friendly product out there. They're going to put the emphasis on the fans and repairing their image as best as they possibly can. So what they end up doing is throughout the entire summer, WWE is all over the place. Every place you go, there's a WWE booth. There's WWE appearances. Superstars are everywhere. You have opportunities to meet everyone. Two that come to mind for me, this was middle of August, I want to say, or definitely August 2007. We went to the Warped Tour, which I believe was held either at Jones Beach or at Nassau Coliseum. That year, it was not held at the place with all the dirt. Remember, we used to go to that place, Randall's Island?
Yeah, Randall's Island. It would have been at Nassau.
Nassau Coliseum. Yeah. And so we went there for that. It was weird because it was outside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember we met Mr. Kennedy at that show, and he was the superstar we met in the booth, and he was actually fun. He was very nice. I do remember meeting him.
Yeah, I remember being a big fan of his.
Oh, I was huge. Yeah.
Just for his promos and like his entrance and all that stuff. Like, I thought that was great.
Yeah, I always say every time WWE, to this day, 15 years later, every time WWE goes to Green Bay, Wisconsin, I always hope they bring out Mr. Kennedy, because I think his entrance was incredible. His whole, he hails from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and like when they were in Green Bay, they just ate this guy up. Like, he was just awesome. And we'll talk about his downfall because it's all related here to the show, unfortunately. But I remember meeting him at Warped Tour and asking him, if I didn't have a question for a wrestler, my go-to is always, what would you say is your favorite match? And he actually thought about it and then gave me the exact date of the SmackDown that he had in which he had a match with Matt Hardy, and he said that was his favorite match. And I remember being like, Matt Hardy's literally my favorite wrestler. So I was like really excited about that. Then a couple weeks later, in I think the most barbaric and awful idea for a show of all time, we went to Ozzfest, and that particular year it was free. It was free Ozzfest. So you had every person who had never really been out of their house go to a show, and it was chaos. It was brutal. It was like, and we had pit tickets. We didn't even have seats. So people were at their absolute worst. The drug use was over the top. The tailgating was brutal. People were being pulled out of there. It was an insanely awful idea. And we went. I remember one of us getting thrown to the floor. I don't know if it was myself or Danny or you. Somebody got thrown to the floor randomly by a guy who looked like The Undertaker, American Badass. It was just, it was insane.
I want to say that might have been Danny because I know he disappeared like into the pits and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember we were sitting back like in like a grassy area. Yeah. And there was a guy that was like 6'7" guy, like 300-pound guy that was like skipping around. And he was just like drunk or whatever off his ass and just like hitting skipping people around, knocking everybody over.
Yeah, it was insane. It was very far away, I remember.
Yeah, it was in like the boonies of New Jersey.
Yeah, I think you had driven us, and I want to say, Danny let us joint the back, or rolled the joint in the back of the car, and I definitely didn't smoke at the time. I still don't, but I know that even if other folks in the car did, it was like, what are you doing, dude? Like, no respect at all.
Well, and the fact that he was sitting in the middle of a two-door car, like,
yeah,
he was sitting in the middle of the back seat of a two-door car. Yeah, whatever.
And it was because it was a free festival. They didn't have the funding to go and get gigantic bands for it. So, like Ozzfest 2002, for example, you had every huge act in music on this festival at the time. System of a Down, like Ozzy, obviously, Drowning Pool, who just came out with Bodies. So it was like a bunch of huge acts. This one, it was like, I want to say, I know Ozzy was on the show, Lamb of God was on the show. And those types of, I know Five Finger Death Punch, they were on the rise. They were on that show. That was my favorite act of the whole night.
I want to say Zakk Wylde was there too.
Well, Zach Wild was with Ozzy, and then yeah, you're right. I think that
like by himself. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had that great band that was like from a different country, and they were all like robotic.
That was at Bamboozle.
Oh, what was
Lordy.
that band's name?
Lordy.
They were amazing.
Yeah.
Was that
with an I, not Lordy with an E, who was like the Australian pop singer, like not her.
Yes, and that was at Bamboozle. So was that same summer?
It might have been.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, we're all over, but I vividly
actually that might have been 2008.
I think you're right, and I remember that was also very far away, if I'm not mistaken. Bamboozle.
That was also somewhere in New Jersey.
Yeah,
I'm blanking on the exact city, but yeah, it was not Ashbury, maybe Ashbury.
And I remember we were there because I think we're into the next band, and Lordy came out. We were like, "What on earth is this?" And they blew us away, and were incredible.
It was like either get early for Muse,
yes,
or or watch this band, and we chose watch that band, and right. I don't regret that decision.
No, they were great. But yeah, Ozzfest was one of these deals where it was like, let's just try to make sure we survive. But one of the big highlights for me at this show was a trio of WWE superstars at the time. And Steve, do you remember who this trio was?
Now I do, because
I asked him a couple days ago.
I never would have guessed. Like it was definitely one of those things where like once you told me who it was, I was like, oh yeah. But I never would have guessed them. Like I would have guessed so many other different groups before them.
Yeah, they it was Deuce, Domino, and Cherry from the other side of the tracks, and they were doing a signing obviously for free at Free Ozzfest. And I remember that you had to get a specific ticket stamped in order to meet them.
Yeah.
And we didn't get it. And when they were done with their signing, they went backstage, and I looked at them, and I had made contact with Domino, Cliff Compton, who went on to fame later on. And was just like, please, can you come back out? I was holding up my ticket for them to sign, and they came running back out, and they actually came specifically to us, took photos, and did all that. And then it could not have been a nicer group, probably because they were like, oh shit, someone's actually legit.
Right, somebody actually wants to meet us. So yeah, definitely.
Why the hell not? And this was all a part of WWE's search for the biggest fan. They had a variety of all these different types of signings leading up to SummerSlam. The 20th anniversary was a huge deal for WWE. And again, repairing that image. So one of the things they were doing, as we now get to SummerSlam weekend, and I always vlog now a lot. If I go to a show, I'll vlog. If you look at my WrestleMania vlog, I've got 5 days of WrestleMania stuff that like leads up to it. WrestleMania 35 that was here in New York, I think I did like 7 days of just nonstop wrestling. Back in 2007, this wasn't really something that existed, but for SummerSlam 2007, it did. Because leading into that show, they had a big kickoff party. It was a big red carpet spectacular that led to a party later on that night in New York City. And it was a place called Spotlight Live. And the idea behind this place was that it was like a concert venue. But instead of going to see an act, you would see people do karaoke. So it looked like you were there to see a big music act, and then it would just be random Joes getting up there to sing karaoke. And on this Friday night, right before SummerSlam, the big exciting piece of this was that it was a night to go and see the WWE Superstars do karaoke and then meet them afterwards. And so for me, it was Jillian Hall, of course, because gotta have Jillian doing her thing. And she was still doing the singing gimmick at the time.
Right.
Maria Kanellis, who was very new at the time, The Miz, MVP, and Mr. Kennedy. So those were the 5 acts, and the only ones that did karaoke were Miz, Jillian Hall, and Maria Kanellis. But the big thing was like meeting MVP and Kennedy, and this line was like endless. There was so many people there, and the point of this also was that you were supposed to try to make a video. There was a thing called Zitto.com that you're supposed to make a video explaining why you were the biggest WWE fan. And you had 15 seconds to explain it, and then they picked the top 15 people, brought them to Times Square, and had a variety of wrestlers be the judges, like Stone Cold, John Cena, variety of people, be the judges to determine who was the ultimate fan and who would eventually be the millionth WWE fan to enter the famed Continental Airlines Arena. And it was a lot of fun. I think the winner got, I think, $25,000 in front row seats to SummerSlam, and that fan also got their 1 millionth number retired into the rafters of the Continental Airlines Arena.
That's pretty cool.
I know this because when I went to see Slipknot at the Izod Center before it closed in 2015, it was still retired.
Wow.
All the way up, it said WWE SummerSlam 1 million 2007. And I was like, oh my gosh. So pretty darn cool that they did something like that. And meeting the wrestlers was great. I remember Miz was incredible. I remember telling him that at the time I had like an entire plan to pretty much mirror the Miz's rise, except I was going to be on Big Brother,
right,
which I did try out for and made it through several cuts. Right before the last cut would have been the trip to LA to try to get onto the show.
Right.
I did that, and I didn't make it past there. But I actually got like a producer call me and explain why, which I thought was great. And I remember explaining this to Miz, and Miz was like, aim higher. Gotta aim higher than me. And I was like, no, but he was awesome. And I became a huge fan of him from that. And then fast forward 4 years later, my first WrestleMania I go to, he's in the main event as the champion. I'm like, this is awesome.
I was gonna say, like, he did pretty well for himself in the end. So
yeah, two-time WWE champion. He's got a reality show on USA. Married to Maurice. Married to Maurice might be the number one accomplishment there. So he's got a beautiful family. So yeah, definitely Miz is awesome. And MVP was great. And MVP was sitting there talking with the fans, and he was trying to get fans to actually do his hair, because there were people that were going to do his hair, that were volunteering to do his hair. And he was like, yeah, if you can do my hair, I'll come to your store and you can do it before the show. That'd be great. And then I'll pump up your stuff as best I possibly can. Probably on his MySpace. But Ken Kennedy was really pissed. These guys were there way later than they were supposed to. Kennedy was like, why are they just still letting people in? And was visibly angry and screaming about, why don't they close the damn door and stop the people? And I remember MVP saying, if he's unhappy, he can go home. No one's here to see him. And It was like this really uncomfortable type deal. But yeah, and then you met him, and he was like just scribbling up the, writing his things all angry, and we went away. So it was a bad experience with Kennedy, not like the experience that we had at Warped Tour with him. But I could also understand like that side of it. It's a free signing. It's supposed to be you end at a certain time. These guys probably have another 3,000 things going on before SummerSlam. Yeah. I kind of get the frustration there.
Yeah. Although I am kind of surprised that they didn't throw out like Lillian Garcia or somebody out there like as like a ringer.
Oh, you mean like to sing?
Yeah, because didn't Lillian like actually release like
she
albums?
Should have been there. Yeah, she should have been. You're right. Yeah. So then the next night, Ring of Honor, Manhattan Mayhem 2 took place at the Manhattan Center. I'm not sure if you were with us at this show.
I remember going.
So you might have been there. Yeah. I think that makes sense.
I remember going. I don't remember, I honestly don't remember if we were sitting with you for some reason. I don't remember if I went with other people or like.
I don't know.
I remember going.
Yeah, I do remember. I think what might have happened was maybe you were seated and we kept leaving to go stand somewhere to get a better view. And you were like, I'm not going to go stand like a fool, like standing in the end. What are you doing? Right. So this was in the Manhattan Center. So not even in the Hammerstein Ballroom, but in the much smaller Manhattan Center. That's like several stories up where they used to film the old episodes of Raw.
Yeah.
And was double main evented by Bryan Danielson going up against Takeshi Morishima in a match that is remembered for Morishima knocking Bryan's eye out of his head or out of his socket and Bryan popping it back in and continuing the match. Amazing stuff. Probably one of my favorite live Ring of Honor matches I've ever been to. And then the main event saw the Briscoes defeating the team of Kevin Steen and El Generico, who are now Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in WWE. So very, very cool stuff.
It's crazy how obviously that's what a lot of like Ring of Honor, as far as definitely around that time, 2007, where it's like, that is where the up and coming guys were. Like, that's where Samoa Joe got to start and everything. Like, so it's so weird how now 15 years later, like those are household names within the wrestling world. Like,
unbelievable. Yeah. I'll never forget. We went to a show, I want to say in Connecticut or something. I went to a Denny's afterwards, and somebody from the roster walked past us, and I said, like, hey man, good show. And then after, so he was like, thanks, man. He went and sat in the booth. And then coming behind him was the rest of the roster.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And I remember Austin Aries came in and he looked right at our table. He's like, not a word. And so the whole roster there, but it was like who's who of like the big stars in TNA and the big stars in WWE years later, and now AEW, and so many of them started in that Ring of Honor deal. And guys like El Generico and Kevin Steen, for me, I was like, these guys will never be in WWE. They were just not what WWE was looking for. And they're two of the biggest stars. Kevin Owens, a former champion, and fought Stone Cold Steve Austin in the main event of WrestleMania this year. So crazy to see where all that comes from.
There you go.
So that show was great. And then finally we get over to the Continental Airlines Arena. And before the show starts, there was another meet and greet, a cavalcade, so to speak, of stars. And no, I do not mean a small parade for you Disney fans out there. It was a really random. This was like, it was set up in the, what was it, like a random, I think it was like way before the show started. If I'm not mistaken.
It was like in a different like an adjacent building or something.
Yeah, and it was like, I want to say at like 12 noon or 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so now you've got, do you remember who was there? Who signed for us that day?
I remember at least one person.
Is it the back?
Yeah, Matt Stryker.
Matt Stryker. Right. Oh, I forgot. Okay, so I know it was Chris Masters, Matt Stryker, Crime Time, and of course your favorite and mine, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And I know this because Flair was chatting with Masters the entire time, and neither of them acknowledged our existence.
Yeah. Yep.
But did you bring your yearbook to have Matt Stryker sign it?
I didn't. I wanted to.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
I forgot it.
Yeah, that would have been incredible. Because I don't know if they told us who was signing.
Maybe, and it didn't click until we got there or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been an amazing. I can't even. It would have just been like, I wonder if someone at some point had to have done this.
Yeah,
because we used to go.
Well, you have a very narrow window of kids that would have been able to do it, because I think he was only teaching at Cardozo for like a year.
Yeah.
And it had to have been whoever happened to be in his class, because I didn't have it. I didn't have him. My girlfriend at the time had him.
Oh, she did?
Yeah. So I would wait for her outside of her class to get out, and see. And I remember a couple of times I was sitting on the windowsill, and he would yell at me about sitting on the windowsill and stuff. So it's
wow. Very, very crazy. I vividly remember suddenly seeing a variety of Cardozo High administration members at random independent wrestling shows that we went to.
Yeah.
And not fully putting it all together that he was working there until you would tell me, oh, you know why they're here? He's actually a teacher now at Cardozo. Yeah. And then eventually he gets busted and leaves. So I remember Stryker, and I remember we were really pumped for him. He was the guy we were really there to see. Him and Crime Time, because Crime Time at the time was the big thing amongst our group of friends, even more so than the Samoan Bulldozer, because we were doing the whole summer. Every time it was time to pay, every time it was time to go to work, it was adapt money. Yeah, adapt money. And that was a huge thing. I think this is their first run in WWE before they get released. And they were really on the rise of becoming one of the hottest acts in WWE.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where it was were they really actually that popular, or did we just make them that popular in our group?
I agree. I'm not, and I don't know the answer to that. But I do know, for example, when Jillian Hall was around, and all of us, I burned her CD because she put out a Christmas album, and at a CPX gifted it to Binder, and we all listened to it, and she became a cult hero amongst our group of people. And so you're right. I think we had a few people like that where it was that was our guy. And these people were our group. And then they were the coolest at a signing where people weren't. And this was, I would eventually go and when we do our retrospective coming up here in about 6 months for the Royal Rumble 2008, I meet Ric Flair again, and he blows me off and does not acknowledge me a second time. And I think that I understand they're free signings, so I do recognize that. I could even understand a little bit unhappiness, but to not even acknowledge, even Cranky Kennedy on Friday night before was at least hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Goodbye. Which I get, but to not even acknowledge people. I've only had it happen, and met a bunch of other people, and I've only had it happen at Access WrestleMania 35, where it was Gallows and Anderson, and they continued their conversation and never even acknowledged who we were. And it's just one of the weirdest and really just shittiest things I think that someone can do.
Yeah, I mean, not that I ever had a very high opinion of Ric Flair personally. Like, you know, I know that this is probably sacrilege to a lot of older wrestling fans, like, you know, where like he's seen as one of the best ever. I never understood it. So, like, to me, a snub wasn't it didn't shatter anything for me. It was like, yeah, no, good. Fuck you too. Like,
right. It's very true. Yeah, no, I you know, for me, I just think it is, I think it just left a little bit of a sour taste. And then eventually we move on to go to actually SummerSlam 2007 proper.